Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. If you are listening for the first time, where have you been? We are on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're of course on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook too. And look, we're here for a summer transfer window update, and we're the end of May. I mean, even Spurs and Last Word on Spurs continue to hit new dizzy heights on this show. And we've got a fantastic regular returning panel that are going to bring you all their thoughts, all their feelings around Spurs and the transfer window, where Spurs have already done their business and got one over the line. It might not be the one that everybody wanted, but we're here to debate it, to discuss it and more. I'm joined by the wonderful Matty Hayes, Patrick Tyrant and George Achillea in the house here to give you all their thoughts and feelings on all things Tottenham Hotspur. Thank you so much as always for joining us. A reminder, a late reminder that there are still availability for you to join us for Last Word on Spurs' end of season special that is coming live and direct to you this upcoming Sunday the 2nd of June from 5 p.m. at the Bricklayers Pub in Tottenham, of course. It's going to be a game-themed show. We're going to take away our concerns, our hopes and our positivity about Spurs and put it all into game-themed elements, which will be a lot of fun. They'll be finding a trophy. They'll be playing your cards right Spurs way versions and much, much more. Come and join us for that show. I'm delighted to say that Patty and George are joining us. Matty will be there in spirit, that is for sure. And like I say, lots to discuss. But only one place to start, guys, if I can. It is a bumper edition of Last Word on Spurs. And that does mean that we have to start with what has been the main news, you've got to say, from the start of the week, coming in towards the end of the week, and that is Timo Werner will remain a Tottenham Hotspur player next season after his loan was extended. Having, of course, arrived in the January on a short-term move from RB Leipzig, Werner will now be a Spurs player until at least June 2025. Spurs do hold an option to buy him in just over 12 months' time for only €8.5 million, which equates to around €10 million to Spurs, working down that buy option. As we know, Werner came in during a spate of injuries for Ange Postecoglou's side and contributed to 4 Premier League goals in his first 7 games. He did only manage 1 assist in the 2 months, though, and missed last 5 games himself through a thigh problem. I think it's really important to also put out there that Werner lost just 1 league game in the 5 that he started, with 5 ending in wins and 3 in draws before Tottenham limped over the line with 5 losses in their last 7 matches. Werner put on Instagram that he's happy to be a Spurs player next year. He's looking forward to seeing everybody at the stadium for yet another incredible season. If I can come to you, Matt, to open up on the show with Werner, because I think this one has definitively split the Spurs fan base. Look, the metrics do back up before the injury. They showed that Werner in his 12 Premier League games for Spurs was among the top wingers in the division, putting in crosses as well as putting them into the 6-yard box. He also topped the division in terms of dribble success rate and winning offensive duels. He also contributed to 5 direct goal involvements in those 12 matches, not including passes that led to own goals for the opposition. Matty, feelings on Timo Werner being a Spurs player for an additional season?
Look, I was one of his biggest defenders last season. No, I never said he was the answer or he was the big solution to the problems that we had out in the wing, but he added a dynamic, and he will next season. He'll add a dynamic that just doesn't quite exist within our wingers at the moment. You know, Son had a very hot and cold season, but I think even on his finest form now, I think he's lost that yard of pace to beat a man down the wing or to get in behind and cause real problems stretching a defence. Werner, 2-footed, you know, he put a lot of dangerous balls into that left foot. He was able to come back on his right foot as well, and that electric pace is such an important thing as well. So I've been one of his biggest defenders. And on the point of missing the sitters, if there's a comment up there, he has missed a lot of chances, and we knew we were going to get that with him. But I think what was important when he came in the first time is he pretty much said to us in his interview, I'm not going to be the one to score goals, but I want to make a difference. I want to create chances for my teammates. And I think, look, as much as you don't want a forward who can't score goals, I think having that awareness is a little bit important. But I was speaking to you on Tuesday, Ricky, and you used the word that I absolutely use as well, and that this signing is just underwhelming. I think that the context of the whole window will be important in how we might look back on this as a whole. But for me, for this to be the first signing of the window is just underwhelming, and I've been hoping for better. Now, look, I will say we don't know who Werner is coming in for. You know, is Werner coming in as a replacement for Manor Solomon? If he's going to move on, is he coming in as a replacement for Brian Hill? Is he coming in as that backup option? Are we going to send some youth players out on loan? There's a lot of questions that are still unanswered, and those questions will absolutely form the opinions of how I look at this and how everyone looks at it. But on the forefront, on the simple signing of Werner on loan for another year, for me, it just is underwhelming.
It's interesting. Look, we've got a lot to debate on this show. It's a bumper edition, so we'll be flying through if we can. I know many want half an hour, 45 debates on the one player. But the reality is, look, there is still a lot to discuss on this show. And Patty, bringing you in, look, I think what I've remained consistent for me is saying with Timo Werner that from what I saw in his time at Spurs, I didn't think he was up to the grade, up to the level. However, I have to take into account, look, Spurs are going to be in Europe next season. They are going to need a bigger squad. It's clearly a player that Ange Postecoglou wants. Spurs are getting business done early, which will obviously please everybody in amongst the Spurs community. I think, again, the problem is it might not be the player that everybody wanted to be the first one through the door or even this early. I think, again, not that it's a concern for us because we don't pay the wages at Tottenham. We're not in charge of the finances. My understanding, Patty, is that in walking through the door is going to amount to him being, I believe, the third highest player wage-wise at Spurs, with around commanding a package of around 165, 170 a week, which, again, you could argue, could that money be put to more economic use to some degree? I think where I stand on it for me is that in the moment right now, it is feeling a bit underwhelming. But again, with the fact that if Spurs go out and buy Eberechi Eze, or they go out and buy for me a couple of really good first team wingers, I've got absolutely no problem with Timo Werner being there as a backup. If we're going to lose the likes of Brian Hill, who, to be no disrespectful to Brian Hill, Werner is an upgrade on him. You can't disagree on that. And Perisic as well, we know, obviously missed a huge chunk of the season due to injury. So if he comes in and fills those two players, I've got no problem with it. Where do you stand on it for you, Patty?
Well, I want to start off with is obviously good evening and what's up to everyone tuning in and listening in tomorrow and everything like that. It's funny, Ricky, because when I quote tweeted this podcast and said, I'm jumping on, so many people in the comments like, make sure you get onto Timo Werner, make sure you be honest and give your thoughts. And it's a tricky one because I totally understand where everyone's coming from. I literally see both sides of it. Yesterday and today, I've seen meltdowns, people going crazy, attacking each other. And for me, that doesn't sit right with me. Like, I don't see why Spurs fans are going after each other because of this signing. That's mental. And this is something I've been saying all year. Like, we need to work on this, man. We're all part of the same family. I don't want to see people attacking each other over an opinion. It's crazy. So that's got to stop. But with the Timo Werner thing, it is underwhelming to a degree. It is, this being the first signing, it doesn't, if we're trying to get to that next level, if we're really trying to, in Ange Postecoglou's words, challenge, and he's not here to sit, to be idle. He wants to push on. He wants to win things. He wants to be contenders. When you have Timo Werner as your first sign-in of the summer, it doesn't really justify what he's saying. It doesn't tally up to what he's saying. But then also the sensible head on me says it's the first signing we had to make if we wanted him, because we had to literally trigger that, extension clause or whatever you want to call it. And maybe it's a bit of smart business. Maybe if he's a squad filler, someone that can come off the bench, change the dynamic of a game, add some, I don't know if this quality is the right word, but he's another body. And we lost Perisic last year. We didn't have Manor Solomon. We had so many injuries. Valise was out on loan. Dane Scarlett is a promising striker, but he's not a winger. Son was played out of position. Richarlison was injured. So with all of that going on, Sonny was away at the Asia Cup. I didn't mind him coming in January, as I said on here many a time. But now in the summer with a brand new season and the fact that the window's open, we can go out and get anyone, not anyone to a degree, but we can go out and get players. I understand why people are losing their shit. So I don't know, man. It's a tricky one because it's too early. The window's not even open. So people are going crazy. The actual transfer window hasn't opened, but we've had to obviously trigger this and get started because obviously we wanted him and we needed to rectify that. He's on 170k a week, which is mental. That's a lot of money. So again, I don't know. I'm really divided. I really don't know what to think because he isn't great and he's not passed the buck at a number of big teams. So, you look at it and say, will he change and will he really deliver at Spurs? The jury's out. I think it was 5 or 6 goals and assists in 13 games, which isn't bad on paper. And he did create a lot of chances. But the thing with Timo Werner is that he misses a lot of sitters. He misses a lot of chances. And I'm okay with Brennan Johnson doing that at this stage of his career. Brennan Johnson is 2 years in terms of the Premier League. First season at Spurs, brand new team, brand new manager, had to, brand new home. learning his trade. But Brennan Johnson registered 10 assists and 5 goals. So as much as people may get onto him, he actually had a decent return. But I'm okay with a 22-year-old bumbling chances and missing open chances and goals. I have reservations if a 28-year-old is doing the same. So, you don't want two wingers that are literally doing the same thing. So again, like I said, I see it from both sides, but we do need depth. We are going to obviously have a lot more games next season. If we want to push on, we will need bodies. But it's too early for me to lose my without
make that
again,
judgment
because we don't know what we're going to do. If we go out and show some ambition and get an Eze in, get some other players, then maybe one of many is great. But if he's like the level and the benchmark, then it is really poor. So I think it's too early. But I do understand, because with years of hurt and frustration, with years of bodge signings, with years of false promises and false dawns, I can understand why people are losing their shit, because they've seen this time and time again. But with a new manager, with a new, hopefully, philosophy, we've got new guys, new recruitment guys, a new chair, director of football. Hopefully they when I look at like the other signings, like your Mickey van der Vens, your Vicarios, your Dojis, all the other guys we bought in, even Brennan Johnson, these guys have all been successful to a degree. So I am using that as like really essentially my safe haven. So that's why I'm not going crazy right now. I do trust in them so far, because what they have done is delivered, so to speak. Even Ange Postecoglou, who I wasn't a fan of, these are guys that have come out, said he's the man, he's come in and he's taken us forward, Some people will argue that he hasn't done as good as he should have. Some people say he's exceeded expectations. But as a club, we have moved forward as a unit. So I'm kind of trusting in that right now, because I understand where people are coming from when they say Timo Werner isn't an answer. But I think it's too early for me to go crazy. So that's where I sit. It's a long-winded answer. Sorry, but I needed to express it properly.
I know we've got like an absolute bumper show of what's to come.
Sorry, man. I wobbled on a bit. I apologise.
There's the Timo Werner section for you. Joking. Let's bring George in. George has had the pleasure there of having to sit and listen to the different opinions being debated, and George gets the opportunity now to bring it all together, the pros, the cons. George, where do you stand on it? It's interesting. Again, look, the pros will be Spurs have moved early. They've got a player that Ange Postecoglou wanted. They've got a player that has had a season under his belt. He knows the team, knows the manager, knows the style of football. The negatives will ultimately be, look, in terms of what he delivered on the pitch, can't get away from it. It was, to me, a fairly underwhelming finishing rate in comparison to when you look at some of the other players that Spurs could go get out there. And again, when you consider, as we've discussed, the huge amount of wages that player is commanding, the fact that it is the first signing, I have to again just point out and caveat the fact that, look, Spurs would have had to do something on this first signing with Werner, because ultimately there was a deadline to meet and Spurs would have had to either activate that or choose not to. They've chosen to. George, where do you stand on this for you?
Okay, so for me, I think to be sort of similar to the other guys, it is a sort of on the fence situation. I know that's probably a bit of a boring answer, but we are just so early into the transfer window. And we barely even finished the previous season, let alone start the next one. That I can't make a full judgment of our signings just on this alone. But what I will say is I think the perception of the move is maybe skewed by the fact of what his minutes were when he joined us in January. I think he basically came in as a rotational option, but because of all the injuries and everything going on, he basically became a starter for Spurs and had to be. So I think maybe there's this perception that us getting him in this early, there's a view that he's going to be more important than he will be, in my opinion. I think Andrew's banged all day long about how much we need to build a squad. We've obviously got Europa League next year that we need a squad for as well. And I truly believe that Werner will realistically be a third choice left winger in effect, because Sonny, none of us really want to see him striker that often. We are going to sign another striker. So Son is primarily the left winger in our team. We are also looking to sign another winger anyway. So I feel like that's going to be the more first choice left winger to rotate with Son. And I feel like Werner is almost... It's the only way I can put it is almost like the Milner of forwards, where he's just there to be able to cover any position that we might do throughout the season if there's loads of injuries and stuff. So I think there's just been a massive overreaction. We're so early into this rebuild as well. If you look at the teams, like, say when City first got their money, they had all the money in the world that they could have bought anyone, but it took years to build a team. You're not... I understand as fans, we want the most exciting players in the world, but you're not going to sign a first team level winger to compete with 3 other wingers in the team. It's just not going to happen 1 year into a new manager and a new squad. And I've sort of changed my opinion on this beforehand. Before we made the announcement, and even when we did make the announcement, in my head, and I tweeted it as well, I thought I would rather give the opportunity to a younger up-and-coming player to be a backup. That was almost my thing, whether that's academy or whether that you sign young. I always thought that maybe that's the best route. But having thought about it, to be honest with you, when you're trying to compete at the top, and you know, when a lot of people say we missed out on Adam Wharton in the midfield and so on and so forth, maybe Eze from the Championship, Elise from the Championship, we talk about missing out on these players and not performing well. But the reality is they perform well because they're given a lot of minutes. Wharton has shone massively in the second half of the season when joining Palace because he played almost every minute for Palace. The teams like West Ham, Palace and co, who buy the Championship players like Bowen, Eze's, Elise's, whatnot, they give them all the game time in the world to develop. If we were to sign a similar ilk player that we think has a lot of amazing potential, but won't give them minutes, they're not ever going to turn into that player. So I think it makes sense to have someone like Werner's a little bit more experienced to play, almost be the second or third choice forward backup. So I don't think it's as bad as people make out. It's just not exciting. We know his deficiencies. He's not going to improve his finishing. That's a major flaw that he has. That's the problem. We know what the issues are. It's just whether we can sort of adjust the way we play when he does play to maybe get him to provide more assists in a match. That's the way I see it anyway.
No, that's very, very fair. Look, I mean, just in relation to Werner and around those stats of finishing and distribution as well. As I said, look, he contributed to 5 direct goal involvements in the 12 matches. That was not included the passes that led to own goals for the opposition. On the other side, the corners we discussed, the finishing, as Georgia said there, is an area of concern. And look, Ange said in relation to hoping Werner would potentially stick around, he said, look, from our perspective, there was a deadline there. He said, again, a lot will depend on the negotiations between the two clubs. But from my perspective, I'm comfortable with the situation. I'll let the other guys steer it. Timo, we signed until the end of the season on loan, and he was part of that strategy. So we need to see what we can do in the summer. He was then asked, are there going to be other gaps that Timo does fit in with that strategy? And he said, look, we have a plan in place. That was irrespective. I think he was good for us. He came in at a really good time in January, an important time when Sonny was at the Asian Cup. Then Richarlison got his injury. We were short in wide areas. Him coming in was very helpful. I think he made an impact. But in my mind, to make those decisions, I still need some more clarity about what we had here first. Now, look, again, we make that point about Werner, that for all the pros and the cons, there's a guy there that ultimately, as we know, obviously in his first stint at Leipzig, had a really, really good finishing ratio. You can't get away from that. And the key is whether Ange Postecoglou can get him back to that level of the player he is, or whether, again, he's a player that's being essentially making up the numbers for the squad. Because, look, I know many are maybe thinking to themselves, that sounds pretty crazy, you know, to give a player, you know, again, wages per week of around 165, 170 for who's going to be a backup. Does sound crazy. But I think, as we've all said here, there is a bit of a caution to really go in too hard right now because, look, Spurs had to act early, as we said, because of the deadline enforced by Leipzig. And I think, again, this is one where at the end of the window, we will be able to give a very definitive answer as to whether this was a right buy or a wrong buy, depending on what Spurs do. I think, as we know, Spurs are in, as the guys have all said there, for hopefully a couple of wingers and a central striker during this summer window. So, look, if Spurs do go out and identify Eze as being the man to come in, I don't think any of us would grumble too hard if we had a situation where Werner was ultimately the backup. If Brian Hill departs the club, we've got Manuel Solomon probably going to be leaving the club, and Perisic, as we know, departed the club during the season. So it's one definitely to keep an eye on, that's for sure. I want to give you guys the opportunity, just a final round the table on this, if you don't mind. Matt, I'll start with you. I'm sitting here with you in 12 months' time, hypothetically. Are we sitting here saying we're going to trigger the option to buy Timo Werner for 8.5 million, yes or no?
No.
Definitely no. Definitely no.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
Even if it is just down to his age profile, I just don't think that's a long term.
Okay. So it's just a case of this season seeing what we've got from him. Let's go with Patty on that. Patty, can Patty do a yes or no? This man is.
No, hopefully not. Like, obviously he's here now. I'll get behind him, but nah, man, I need to see better than Timo Werner. I'm sorry, and you know what? I don't mind.
So hold on, Pat. If he has an incredible scoring record this upcoming season, gives us 15 goals and gives us 10 assists, you still want to be looking to trigger that agreement
obviously,
for 8.5 million?
Then my mind changes, of course, but I just can't see it with. Yeah, I think everyone here has hit the nail on the head. George said it expertly. His deficiencies in front of goal, they really concern me, and I don't know. Matty will say the same thing as well. I just don't see it personally. Yeah, he's depth, and yeah, he offers a different dimension, but Yeah, I don't know. No for me. No.
Okay.
I want to see quality in the team, man. I don't want to see these guys 28, 29 journeymen, basically. That's what he is. He's a journeyman that's got another lease of life. Of course he's happy to stay at Spurs. Of course he wants to be at Spurs, but yeah, it is underwhelming, man. I'm not going to lie to you.
George, let's come to you, my man. 12 months time we're sitting here, George. You're back again. You're looking for another end of season party. what we say, George? Are we renewing Timo Werner on a full-time basis and giving him a contract this season, become a permanent Spurs player?
No, I don't think so. But I tell you what, I think that's why he is alone again now. We could have easily triggered the 13.5 mil, whatever it was before, because it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's peanuts. I think, and like you said earlier, Ange has discussed with the Johan Lange and the club. They've got their plan set in place. I truly believe that getting Timo to sign on a loan will help us get much bigger targets later in the window. I think the idea is we're going to spend more money on first team choice players and bringing in a player on loan, an experienced player on loan for one more year, to then bring in the proper backup players from next summer onwards. I think that's the long-term plan, in my opinion. That's how I see it.
I think the key thing we've all said here, guys, that look, it's obviously a player that Ange Postecoglou wants. And look, I think, again, just in relation to that, Ange said straight after that game, of course, in Australia, that we've got a plan in place that I'm really comfortable with in terms of incomings and outgoings, as we've discussed. You know, we don't know what's happening with Manuel Solomon's future. That is up in the air. Brian Hill, one that probably looks is going to depart, and we have still got that void to fill with Ivan Perisic. I think it's one that will continue to split the fan base. And look, from my perspective, guys, I'm here just to steer the show. The reality is, you lovely, wonderful, beautiful people will make up your mind as to whether it's right or wrong. That is for sure. It's worth emphasising, this is from Ali Gold, that Ange still wants plenty of attacking additions in the summer, with a striker high on the priority list. And in Australia, he said and emphasised the fact to Ali that there is a need to have more firepower and creativity to bolster the squad. It's no secret. You see the way we finished the season. We obviously lost Richie and Timo as well. We started the season with Mana and Perisic, and we were quite healthy in that front third. But as the year went on, it became pretty evident that we need to bulk up. We're in Europe as well, so we'll have more games to play. And it's definitely an area that we'll need to strengthen. Fabrizio Romano has also tweeted to say Spurs are still looking for new signings up front after the Timo Werner deal. Spurs are considering a number of wingers and central strikers in case of good opportunities, with several players to expect to leave, and Brian Hill is likely and could be sold this summer. Right, from one debate to another, it's a busy show, guys, so please bear with us here. We have had some news come through from Jack Pitbrook over The Athletic that Spurs will be looking to trigger an option for Heung-Min Son's contract. That will mean he's under contract with the club until 2026. This has been reported, I think, quite a number of times throughout the season, so it won't be a huge big news to many, but just really intrigued to get the guys' thoughts. Probably if I come to you, Matt, and say to you now, look, I think for Son's return, which was fairly decent in terms of goals and assists, I think the reality will be, many will want to know, are we out there looking for really the next Heung-Min Son? And it's not to say we should be selling Heung-Min Son, but it's to really emphasise the point that Spurs do need to, in my opinion, be planning for that future in that position. Is that fair to say, Matty?
Yeah, for definite. I think there's a lot of positions we need to plan for, but like having Son on the left wing is a headache that we don't have to deal with for another couple of years, because look, Son, he's not still at his best. Like I said earlier, he's lost that yard of pace. I know this season he was kind of moved around a few different positions, and he at times he looked good in the striker position. At times he looked better out in the left. But it's been far from a straightforward season from him. His first with the captain's armband as well, and trying to completely transform his game, because really when he's been at his best over the last 4 or 5 years, it's been counter-attacking with Harry Kane. And if you go from counter-attacking with Harry Kane to trying to be the provider for Richarlison, it's a very, very different kettle of fish. And it's one that I think Son has dealt with well, but not perfectly. So I think he still has some development to do in the way that we play. But with the amount of changes we need to make to the squad, I'm absolutely delighted that we have someone like Son to put out in the left for another couple of years and deal with the more pressing issues like the midfield and bringing in another striker and kind of strengthening that depth in defence as well. So it's a no-brainer. I feel and I have always felt as though Son is going to be one of those players who will retire into a coaching role at Tottenham or maybe something a little bit more in a more executive kind of capacity, because he's Tottenham through and through. He's not only an incredible footballer but an incredible human being, and that's exactly what we want around our football club in any capacity we can have. So yeah, any good news around Son is fantastic news for the football club.
Yeah, can I come around to you, George, and we'll get a pat on this. You know, I've seen obviously quite a number of Spurs fans, George, be fairly critical of Son during the last campaign. I think we can call it last campaign now because it has come to an end. I know even Ali said on his recent show, when is it the end of that last season? When do you start calling it a new campaign? George, what did you make of Son's contribution for last season? Obviously, his first as a captain. How would you rate it out of 10 and your overall feelings on Sonny?
I thought last season he was brilliant, to be honest with you, for the most part. I think the season before where he really struggled, and we found out that he was carrying an injury that the whole time. I think, especially towards the beginning of the season when he was playing that left wing role and nailed it down. And to be honest with you, there were some games where he actually did really well at striker, but I think inevitably there's when you come up against tougher opponents with better defenses, Son doesn't have that hold up play that Kane did and so on and so forth. So naturally, he just isn't going to be a fit for that sort of striker position. But I think overall he had a great season. Top goal scorer, the amount of contributions he got was some of the best in Europe. I think he just had little spells and dips here and there. And bearing in mind, we missed him for like 2 months of the season as well. So I'd definitely give it a solid like 7.5, 8 out of 10.
You know what? I mean, again, it's interesting with Son because I think there's many out there that do just want to see Spurs ultimately, George, sticking you for a second, have that plan for the future where, look, I think many love Son, they adore Son. We know, obviously, we've got a huge following in Korea on this show because of the love and adoration there is for Heung-Min Son and the fact that he took that captaincy armband at a time where Spurs lost the poster boy. As we know with Sonny, that very opportunity that's come his way at Spurs to maybe look to push for a move. He's never done that. He's almost actually even hunkered down even more and firmly embedded himself into Tottenham folklore. I won't say you guys, and you can make your own mind up what you made of the fact of Sonny not scoring against Man City, whether that makes him even more of a Spurs legend or not. That's a different debate we don't want to go into tonight on this show. But ultimately, George, for you, I mean, on this point with Sonny, you said there wasn't a bad contribution overall. Is it the fact that as a club, we should still be planning for the future and ultimately looking for the next Heung-Min Son? That's not to take away anything from Sonny, and hopefully he's here for still a couple of years and more, right?
Yeah, you have to. You have to. There's any club, you've got to plan for the future and whatnot. Whether that's someone from the academy breaking through or making a younger sign in preparation, which is probably what we didn't do enough for Harry Kane. Let's be honest. I don't think any of us really expected him to go necessarily when he did, and we're sort of missing his goal contribution massively. And I still see Son at the club for the next 3 years minimum. But at the end of the day, you've got to plan for the fact he is getting older. Will there be some serious injuries that will see him out for a long time? We haven't really seen that happen to Son at all, to be honest, at Spurs. He's always seems to be available. Look, his finishing is some of the best in Europe. Statistically, it is the best in Europe for right now. And I don't see that aspect of him slowing down. So no matter what happens, I think he'll be a good player to come, but you've got to plan for the future and make sure the club can take that next step.
Absolutely. I mean, Patty, bringing you in, look, in terms of the contributions that you had this season, 27 goal contributions in 35 Premier League games. You know, we're talking about a player that still had a really important impact on the season. I believe he still finished the season as Spurs' top goal scorer. Again, there does seem to be a lot of conflicting views on Sonny amongst the Spurs fan base to some degree. I think, look, many have adored his time as captain and hope that, again, he can continue to lead the club forward. I think, again, we know with Sonny as a player, this is the situation where, again, where he's so in demand for his country, you are going to get times during a season where he may be called up for, as we see, the Asia Cup, different international tournaments that, again, as a club, we have to bear, grin and deal with because of the nature of just how popular he is for his country. Where are you on Sonny, Pat? And are you in the same mindset as the boys that you'd like to see him extend and be triggered on that contract and hopefully still be leading the club for many, many more years?
Listen, for me, Son is a hero. He can do no wrong in my eyes. The guy was our top goal scorer. Not you believe, Ricky, he was. He was our top goal scorer, 17 goals. Joint top assister with 10, the same as Brennan Johnson. He would have had an easily 15 or 16 if some of these guys could finish. He created so many chances. He was played on the left. He was played through the middle, sometimes on the right. He was played out of position more often than not. And he still produced. He was away at the Asia Cup as well. Came back, didn't miss a beat. He's our talisman. He's our captain. I don't really understand the slander when people get onto him. Like, you know, he has a bad game or half a bad game. Oh, Son's finished. Son's this, Son's that. If you play any player out of position as much as Son was, they're not going to look their best. But the guy always delivered, still delivers for us. I love him, man. I think he's a fantastic player. Don't forget, whenever he was touted and followed by all the biggest teams, Son was always loyal, always stated that he's Spurs through and through, never flirted with other teams when he could have, signed an extension, will sign this extension. The guy's Spurs through and through, man. And it's one that we'll never know. But when you look at that chance that he had against Man City, and you know how good of a finisher Son is, I just think he purposely aimed it at the keeper and thought what will be, because Son tucks that away 9 times, 10 times out of 10. And I know it's a controversial opinion, but I feel he purposely missed that, because he's that much a Spurs hero. He knew what it would mean to Spurs and obviously to the fans. So I love him, man. Honestly, I really don't understand when people get onto him. He was still our best player last year. And I think he's still got a lot of good years ahead of him. And like Matt said, yes, we need to start planning for the future, but with so many other areas, you don't worry about Son in that position. You know we're good there. And that's why I feel that I can't say anything bad about him, to be fair.
Okay, look, guys, what we are going to do, we are going to go for our first break of the show. For our listeners and audio, we've got over nearly 3,000 of you that are watching us live right now on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. As always, thank you so much for all your incredible support for the show. We're joined by Matty Hayes, we're joined by Patty, who is chatty, and we're joined by George Achillea on this Last Word on Spurs. Look, we are doing a summer transfer window update, and yes, we're still in May. Just the bonkers nature of Spurs and what we've got to come. For the kids out there, look, we are moving behind the scenes at Spurs to bring you some really, really big transfer shows throughout the summer. A lot of these guys will be featuring on them as well. But we have got, can I just say for the young kids out there, a bomber of a signing lined up. Can I just say that's going to be joining us frequently throughout the summer transfer window. That's all I can say at this stage. Speculation, you do your thing. But we're bringing that news to you very, very soon as the window does open. Right, we're going to go from one forward to another if we can, and that is Richarlison, who, look, start of the week insisted he will not be leaving England during the upcoming season, if I can now call it that. Now, Richie, of course, operating his preferred role for Spurs, in which he scored 12 goals and 4 assists in 31 games across the season. It is, again, worth me pointing out there that, again, it was an injury-ravaged campaign for him, which Richie did suffer a lot, again, with mental health. And for that, of course, look, we wish him all the luck in the world with the battle that he's got there. And I'm sure all of us can sympathise and really hope for Richie that he can face those demons and come through them. But I'm sure that's an ongoing battle for him. Look, he was on the score sheet for wins over Forest, Everton, Bournemouth, Brentford. And of course, the Brazilian helped himself to a double against former club Everton in a 2-2 draw. As we know, his last performance of the season saw him contribute with a goal and assist in Spurs' 4-2 defeat at Liverpool. The speculation hasn't gone away that Richarlison would be leaving the club this summer. Although he did state on Instagram from him, it will be fake news that he would be leaving England. He said, I've given up my holidays and came to work in Sao Paulo so I can come back better next season. What's happening right now in the media these last few days is all fake news. I insist I will be not leaving England next season. We have had a report, I can say, from Dan Kilpatrick over at The Standard, who has put out there that Tottenham will consider bids for Richarlison, despite the striker's insistence that he will not leave England. We'll come, if we can, to Matt to start on with this. Matt, Richie, where are you on it? Can Spurs upgrade on Richarlison? And also, will he be a Spurs player come the end of the window when that does eventually open?
To be honest, I think my stance is the exact same as what it appears the club stance is, in that we don't need to sell him. But if the opportunity arose to make back most of, if not all, the money that we spent on him, I think it's one that we should take, because his value isn't going up, and there are better options out there. But having said that, like you mentioned there, he had a very good goal scoring record last season for a player who was so injured. And if we remember the game against Chelsea, if we can, Van de Ven and Maddison got injured in that. But I think what we kind of forget about that is afterwards, Richarlison went and got surgery on the injury that he was carrying. He missed about a month, and he came back, and that's when he scored 10 and 10. So when we saw a fully fit Richarlison that wasn't carrying a knock, that wasn't playing through pain, he was immense, and he scored a lot of goals. He scored a lot of important goals for us as well. So it's one debate saying how good he is when he is fully fit, but then keeping him fit is the issue, and that's something that we kind of need to contend with as well. But where I said that we have a lot of problems to deal with, and Son is a place where we can be really, really confident that that's okay for now. With Richarlison, it's not to the same degree, but I think he's not a huge weakness that we need to address straight away. Like, I think there are some other places in our team. He's someone that we can deal with for the next 12 months maybe, and then look to improve. But I did say it on Twitter, or on X, or whatever you want to call it, on Musk's ruined platform, that the wording of his statement was a little bit interesting, and that he said he was staying in England rather than staying at Tottenham. And it may be me just reading into it. It might be just a difference in the way that we speak. But I think maybe he just doesn't want to leave England. Maybe it's a move to Saudi Arabia, which which he just doesn't want at all. I think I said that when the rumors first came out, that he's a very progressive person and has been open about that. So I feel a move to Saudi Arabia wouldn't suit him and the character that he is. But then, as people pointed out to me, what teams are there in England that could actually pay that money and would pay his wages? So it's a difficult one. But at the end of the day, he has a contract. If he wants to stay, he stays, and there's nothing much the club can do about that. As much as we might accept a bid or try and convince him that another place is the best place for him. If he wants to stay, he'll stay, and I think we will have him in our squad next season.
Thank you for that, Matt. Patty, coming over to you. Look, in relation to Richie, Dan Kilpatrick has said that the 27-year-old has attracted interest from more than one of the Saudi state-backed clubs who will be able to match the 60 million bid or offer that Spurs had accepted for Everton for the striker a couple of years ago. Patty, I want to ask you, based on his output and based on the fact of what Spurs could maybe get out there for 60 million, do you think there's an opportunity where we could upgrade on Richarlison if we were to get our money back? Where do you stand on Richie for you and the news that Spurs, in Dan Kilpatrick's obviously article, would be open to his sale if the right bid come around?
Yeah, we could upgrade on him for 60 million, but the problem for me is that we need two strikers. I think Matty said it as well. Richarlison's not the biggest issue. He is frustrating because when he's fit and he's playing well, he definitely improves our team. Like, you saw the game against Liverpool where he makes such a big difference. And even I think it was, I can't remember that. There's quite a few games where he's come on and made a huge difference and had a massive impact. But he's had a lot of problems with injuries, and that's been really frustrating. And every time you think he's back, something else happens. And he was carrying a knock, needed surgery, came back. He's someone that does put the team before himself, which I do admire. Hence why he's played with pain and niggles. And obviously when he needed surgery, he needed it. But he frustrates me as well because you can see that there's a player there, but sometimes the touch is not there. A 5-yard pass, he's overhitting it, underhitting it, or the strikes on goal are not clean enough for someone that's been playing at his level for such a long time. So the thing is, if we do sell him, we need to get two strikers in. And is that too much change too soon if you're then getting in, a DM, two strikers, this or that? So I don't know. Sometimes too much change in the same window is a problem. But obviously, if there is a bid and, they can match it, again, I'm kind of divided on him because I said at the beginning of the season, if he didn't get 15 league goals, it's time to move him on. He didn't get 15, but he didn't play a lot of games. But he got 11 and 5 assists, which isn't a bad return for the amount of minutes he played. But I don't know, even when I look at the strikers options out there, there's, there's a couple of 20 goals a season strikers. When I look at the 11 to 15 mark, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to improve on Richie and get another striker in. So I'm divided. I'm torn. I can't really answer the question properly if I'm being honest. Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want him? Do you want him to stay, Pat? Do you want him to stay?
I want him to stay, but I want us to really go out and get a top striker. So I don't know, Ivan Toney.
So in your mind, Pat, going into next season, he's a backup in your eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
For a main striker.
That's what I prefer. I'd prefer him to stay. He knows the club now. He's been there a long time. You can see what he can do when he comes off the bench or when he's starting. And then you play him in Europe. You play him in maybe the cup games early on. But you have an out and out, number one. So you have a Ivan Toney or whoever it may be, and then he's the backup to that, and he can rotate. But I don't want him to be our main number 9. He's not reliable enough, and he's not good enough, if I'm being honest. But as a backup, no problem.
I mean, George, bringing you in here, I think there's no doubt about it that I think we've all got that feeling that we've never truly replaced Harry Kane. I don't think anyone actually believed that Richarlison was going to be able to step up and actually hold that mantle for Harry Kane, despite the fact that he had that incredible run actually during that period where, was it from November to February, where he ended up getting 8 goals in 9 games. Actually a really good return of form. You can't disagree with that, but it does feel that definitely one area Spurs need to improve is the forward line. I know there's been that talk that Ange doesn't really like playing with a central striker. He more likes the contribution and influence from wingers. But how do you feel, George, going into a season with European football coming up, Spurs have to surely go out and get a number 9, and surely it has to be a player that I think we've all got that feeling and belief this guy is going to get 20, 25 goals. I'm not saying we can go and get another Harry Kane, but just that feeling that we can get for what many feel a striker that you do believe has got goals in his game.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to get one. I think I agree with Patrick almost like word for word what you were saying. I think As a player, I'd want to keep him. I think I don't really see a world when we do actually sell him, to be honest with you, because I think Matt nailed on the head there, whereby Saudi clubs are the only ones that realistically are going to offer what the club want. And Richarlison does not strike me as someone that wants to move to Saudi. Same way Son has said he doesn't want to move there, so on and so forth. So I think for me, it's a situation where we probably will just end up keeping him. And I think that's great. We need another strike. We need two strikers going into Europe. Just in general, anyway, when we've had all the injuries throughout the season this year, we saw how important it was needing that backup striker. Because when when Richarlison was out and we had to play Sonny there and it didn't work, we quite literally just had no other option. And I definitely don't want to see Werner at striker in that position. So I need a top striker to come in. When you look at Ange's previous teams, most recently, obviously, Celtic, the striker has the least touches of any player in the team in the system. Like you say, the work comes from the wingers, but the striker just needs to literally just be in and around the box. Quite a physical, strong player, so they can just almost get the tap-ins when it's dragged back in by the wingers and stuff, which that's not Sonny's game at all, which is why I don't think he thrives there. I think Richarlison is very good at that. He probably has some of the better hold-up play out of our forward line that we have currently, but we need him to be fit and available, which he isn't. I do think there are better than him anyway in general, but I think as a second striker to play throughout the season, I think it would be great to keep. And like Patty said, we're not gonna replace him and get another striker and bring Werner in and bring a midfielder and potentially bring in someone like Eze or a centre back. It's just not going to happen in one window. It's unrealistic. So yeah, keep Richie for another year, have him as a backup, and sort of see what position we are in next summer and how we do with whoever the new striker might be.
George, you're going to hate me for this follow-up question. You said it in your statement there. Define me a top striker.
Look, to be honest with you, if I knew that
Tottenham can buy.
This is the thing. If I knew that, I'd be working at Spurs and letting them know. I think when you're looking at the targets, there's big risks because you've got players like I don't know how to pronounce his name, Go, because the Swedish striker at Sporting. I mean, he's just sustained an injury, which is a bit of an issue. But he had a phenomenal season with them, a phenomenal season with Coventry. But that's obviously the more expensive big name. Tony, fantastic finisher on his day, but obviously struggled when he came back. And I don't know if all the stuff behind the scenes is something that Andrew would want to deal with. I think the market is a bit bone dry at the moment. So I couldn't tell you who that is. But that's the job of the new backroom staff that we brought in to go through all the data. It's looking most likely that it's going to be Jimenez from Feyenoord. But I couldn't tell you if he's the right guy or not.
Can Matt tell us? He's come off mute. Come on, Matt.
So the interesting thing about Gyökeres from Sporting is he came through the same academy that Kulusevski and Lucas Bergvall came through in Sweden. I know Tottenham are trying to make some sort of partnerships with Djurgården, who's Bergvall's current club, but I'm sure there's some interest in that academy at, I'm going to try to pronounce it, Brommapojkarna. Apologies to any Swedish viewers or listeners. So that could be an interesting thing. Maybe there's some sort of connection there that the Tottenham might want to make. But I also do think there'll just be a lot of competition for him. I'm not sure I would see Tottenham being kind of in that list of options he has.
Yeah, listen, guys, I'd just encourage those that are watching his show back on YouTube or on audio, get it in the comments for us. Get in the comments who you would feel for you would be the striker you'd like to see come in and make that one difference to Tottenham. Give us a couple. Give us one or two. I mean, I think many are saying out there Spurs may need more than one striker. They might have a couple. We'd love to get your views on that in relation to, where Spurs do stand. There's no doubt about it. I think we all do have that feeling Spurs need to get a striker. I think the general consensus is that, again, while Spurs could command quite a decent fee for Richarlison, maybe there isn't that real desperate need to move him on. It may just be a need to bring somebody in that is a bit more prolific, less injury prone, and someone that you can guarantee 20, 25 goals a season with and have Richie as part of the squad. Because again, we have to make this point. Spurs are in Europe. We'd love to see the club also go as far as they can in the cup competitions. So let's hope Spurs do, like I say, address that in the market. And as you've been name checked already, Johan Langer, I know you're watching. Get the wallet out, as they say, and speak to Daniel Levy. Right, we're going to go from one future to another. Hopefully this one is less concerning than Richarlison's, and that is of Christian Romero, who has publicly stated that he is not thinking about leaving Tottenham Hotspur and believes he has enjoyed one of the best seasons under his career with Ange Postecoglou. Now, the Argentine was a guest on the D Sports TV in the interview, which was reported on by Ole, in which the Argentine announced that, from his perspective, he was definitively not looking to leave the football club, despite the odd transfer link away. He said, "The truth is I'm fine. for now, I'm not thinking about a transfer. I'm thinking about preparing myself for these next few days to get ready for the national team and in the best possible way, which the next step I have in my mind. The things that come up at the moment are obviously always analysed when he refers to transfer speculation. But no, I'm not thinking about my future. My sole focus is on the national team. I have the Copa America. I will always take the national team to the top, and then we'll see what happens. He was also speaking and reflecting about his first season under Ange Postecoglou, in where he announced he's very happy at present, even though group achievements haven't been the best, or we didn't expect to end the season the way we did. At the group level, for the coach's first year, he has been good on all lines. We have to keep wanting more. Individually, I'm very happy for the beautiful season that we had. And from his perspective, he amounts that from his own point of view, that there has been a tough couple of campaigns, but this one under an Australian is by far his most favourite yet. He spoke about the growth. He spoke about the need for Tottenham to really go out and, again, address the areas in this upcoming summer window. We'll start with you, if I can, on this, Pat. Christian Romero, I think we can all privately say, if we want to say privately or publicly, he has been arguably, for me, one of the most underrated players of Spurs' previous season. I think, again, when you compare, of course, the raving reviews, rightly so, for Mickey van der Ven, I think Romero can find himself really unlucky to not have been considered further for the player of the year. I think he was that good. I know when we did that season review show, which, of course, Matt was part of that as well for a couple of weeks ago, I think Matt put him down as being his player of the season. I know he has been many player of the season for those out there as well. Romero, where do you stand for you, Pat? Any concern by this news? Or again, is it just a reaffirming statement that we've got to keep these players happy and look to progress as a football club?
No, I don't think it's a concern for me. I think Romero is saying all the right things. At the end of the day, I've said it so many times on so many different shows. He's a world-class centre-back. He's so good, so comfortable on the ball. One of the best passing centre-backs I've seen in world football. Reads the game at a remarkable... he's not the quickest player in the world, but he always seems to be in the right place. And then when your centre-back's chipping in with 5 goals in a season, that's insane. He's definitely calmed himself as well. Not as many rash cards, not as many rash tackles. Obviously, the Chelsea game was literally a blip, as we didn't see that again. I think he's such a good player. And he does it, club level. He does it in the Champions League when he plays Champions League. And he does it on the international scene. He's a top player. And obviously, someone of that ilk and that quality, he's not silly. He knows that there will be other clubs looking at him. And I feel for Tottenham, this next season will be a defining season, because to keep guys like him happy, he's not coming out and saying, I want to move. But he is putting the feelers out saying, if you guys don't move to the level where, a player of his caliber and his age needs to be playing at, then of course there will be suitors and people looking to snatch him away from us. So we do need to step up. And that's why, again, like I said earlier, I can understand why people are going crazy about Timo Werner, because if they see that level of signing, they're a bit worried. But I think it's too early to be worried. Again, this was a question I wanted to ask you guys, and maybe we can, add it into the... A lot of people were saying that Ange said that he calls the shots. It's Ange's team. So they're like, if Ange is buying Timo Werner, is he a yes man? Or does that show that Ange doesn't know what it takes and all of that stuff? And I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's something that is quite interesting, because I've seen a lot of people have that as a meltdown. That's their, Ange's washed. He won't last till Christmas if this is his level of signing. So again, I understand why people are going a bit crazy, but I do, going back to Romero, no, I just think that Tottenham do need to. We are pretty much in that limbo land at the moment. We're in that middle part. Like, we finished 5th, 2 points off Aston Villa. We could have definitely secured Champions League football if we didn't have that wobble. But again, it's a new season. There's so much going on. And next year will be a defining season for Ange, for some of these players. And we'll really see where we're at. So, we can't rest on our laurels. When I look at the top 3 teams, forget Aston Villa for a moment, but you look at the top 3 teams, that's where the gap needs to be bridged. Arsenal, Liverpool, and obviously Man City. There's a big golfing class between 1, 2, 3, and then you got 4 and 5. And I want to see us really try and bridge that. So there needs to be players coming in, and we need someone to protect the centre-backs, because as good as we think Romero and Mickey van der Ven are, we know how good they are. Statistically, defensively, they didn't have a good season because we shipped in so many goals, and we just need to balance that out a bit so their qualities can shine and they can also look good both defensively and offensively. So, yeah.
Again, I think it's the first time coming over to you, Matt, if I can, where there's been a little subtle hint from Romero that ultimately, look, He's analysing offers. He's not stupid. There'll be clubs out there that are watching him, looking at him. I think to some degree, as Pat has said there, look, he really reined it in this season from a discipline perspective. I think we did see that real change. I wouldn't say of character completely, but a real more discipline factor to his game after, of course, that Chelsea game where we know, obviously, the outcome from that and where it led to in terms of the season. But what do you take away from those comments, Matt? Again, he was very much adamant from his perspective that, look, he's happy under Ange. It's been one of his best seasons of his career. I think, again, what we can't disagree with the fact that he's enjoyed playing for him because it's produced his best season of his career, so far at Tottenham. So is there a subtle hint in there, Matt, that we've got to keep progressing, or like all players, they will be looking at their futures?
Yeah, it didn't really come as a surprise to me. I think, with someone like Harry Kane, when it was coming to the time when people were talking about him going, there was a sentimentality there, and there was a nostalgia there for Kane, that he came through the academy and he'd been for the team for so long. He was one of our own. For a player like Romero, that doesn't quite exist. He's been here 3 years, and he definitely has an incredible relationship with his teammates, with the manager, and especially with the fans, and that does count for something. But I don't think that's enough if, for example, a Real Madrid came in with an offer, or if a Bayern Munich came in for an offer. And well, look, I'd love if he was 100% focused on Tottenham and he wasn't even entertaining the idea of going somewhere else. But also, it's in an odd way reassuring to know he still has that ambition, and that there's players in that squad that still do have that ambition, that want to be the best that they can, and they don't want to stay maybe where it's comfortable for them to be. But what we need to make sure we do over the next year or two, and I mentioned this during the review earlier in the week, with Liverpool in a period of change, with Man City soon going through a transition, with United and Chelsea being the absolute laughing stocks that they are, there's an opportunity there for Tottenham to make a statement in English football, and try and establish ourselves as one of the teams that can compete for trophies every season. And Romero is the type of player that we need to keep a hold of if we want to make that happen. But it's a weird catch-22 in that we need to become that team to guarantee that we can hold him, but we need him to. It's a difficult situation, but if there was a player in the team that I thought would not jump ship, but would make that move if a proper offer came in, Romero would definitely be one of them that's up there. And I'm not upset about that, because, like I said, there's no sentimentality there for him as much as there is for us and for other players that have been there. So yeah, it's kind of just, for me, he just said what I'd already suspected. And like what you're saying about the improvement that he's made this season, I think the best thing that Ange did with him and the coaching staff behind the scenes did with Romero was they didn't try and get rid of that fire and that aggression that he had in the game. They just helped him learn how to control it. Because Romero still goes flying into the most ridiculous challenges every single game he plays. He'll be sprinting 20 yards out and say, look the goal he scored against Arsenal.
I'm thinking of the clattering of Edison as well in the City game.
Yeah, but that goal against Arsenal, we're 3-0 down at home to our arch rivals who are fighting for a league title. Yeah. And our centre half is pressing on the edge of the opposition box. He still has that craziness about his game. But it's just he's been taught how to control that in a much better manner. But hopefully for the long term that benefits us and not another club.
Okay, interesting. Do you feel, Matt, it's a definitive season for Romero coming up? Do you feel any concern, just before I go to George there, that we need to see some real progression here? Because a player that, if he does have another decent season, would you be concerned looking over your shoulder, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, like the age he's at as well. He's not going to be around forever to try and win trophies in his career. I don't know off the top of my head when he's won a club level before Tottenham. I know he's at Juventus, but I'm not sure how I don't know how involved he was in the squads there. So like, time isn't on his side as much as it might be with other players in our squad. In terms of what he can do in the future. So yeah, I think once we have that level of progress season on season, I think we'd be in a better position to keep hold of him. But like no, Matt, I'm worried, quietly worried.
Let's bring you, George, in. Look, he admitted, as I've said, obviously during this piece, that ultimately for him, that after a tough couple of campaigns, he's really enjoyed this one by far under Ange Postecoglou. He said, look, I think I've gone from the lowest to the highest. Having gone to the Premier League has already been a very important achievement for me, because I knew I could grow a lot. The first season had its ups and downs, the injuries, the adaptation wasn't easy. The second season, I think I adapted fairly well, and the third one for me has been one of the best I've done so far. We know that he's got a desire from his perspective to go to the Olympics. He did, though, say that it will be a case where the club have got to work with, of course, the country, obviously nationally wise, of Argentina, to find that agreement if he does feature in the Olympics. I think, to be fair to Ange, he didn't seem too keen on the idea when he was pressed on that in a press conference, obviously, during the season. But what's your takeaways from the interview, George? Because, look, again, there would be that element where Matt says that it's good to see that he's got that ambition. He's not just here for the sake of being here. He wants to progress as a footballer. But there may be some that are quietly concerned because, again, he had a really good season last, obviously, campaign. And the element with Tottenham, as we know, is that trying to find that really good centre-back pairing when you go through Tottenham over the last 15, 20 years, you can only really say a couple of times that we've actually established a really good pairing. Maybe you'd argue the likes of Ledley King, Michael Dawson. You can argue Alderweireld and Vertonghen. We're now in a situation where we've got, of course, this pairing of Romero and Mickey van der Ven, and we've got Dragusin in there as well. Any concern for you, George, about Romero's long-term future?
I'm not concerned for this summer at all. I think he's good for Spurs again, given how good the season was. And again, it sort of links to the Werner move in a way for me, where it's like I can't panic now, given how early it is. That there's so much longer to go when it comes to the transfer window and how we improve our squad or sell certain players.
Yep.
It's one of those ones where I think we just need to match his ambition, which is the case that we all want, right? It's we want to win things. The players want to win things. They're not going to stick around if they're not winning things. Look at what happened to Kane, the club hero, been there since a kid, but he's eventually had enough and realised that he needed to try something else in order to win things. And Romero, for me, I've always said he is a Real Madrid caliber of centre-back. I think there is a world where they would try and sign him potentially next year if we don't win something again. So for me, I think next season is extremely important. We have to get the rest of this window right. We have to really challenge for whether it's the going all out for the Europa League, whether it's actually trying to secure a Carabao Cup early. I know we say it every year, but I think it's a really, really important one next year for us to really show that we mean this progress under Ange. And unfortunately, I think if we go another season trophyless, he is probably one of the main players that I'd expect to see go next summer and look for a move.
Okay, interesting. Look, we'll see obviously what pans out with Christian Romero. The element of that he's come out, he's had his say. I think the takeaways from that, you have to say, look, he seems very, very happy under Ange Postecoglou. He's come off the back of playing his best season under the new manager, which seems to indicate things are going in the right direction. But just a sole hint there, as the boys have dropped, and as we've all dropped on this show, that look, Spurs can't afford to drop the ball in terms of progression. They've really got to have a decent season coming up. Or like I say, players like the caliber of Romero's, the Mickey van der Ven's, rightly so, will be thinking at my career, is this the place that's right for me? Does this club want to win trophies? Do they want to be successful? Do they really want to push forward? And I think the next 12 months tells us a lot where we're going down that line. And ultimately, I know many Australian viewers and listeners that listen and watch this show always tell us, look, the second season under Ange is always the most exciting one. So that we'll see where that brings. No pressure at all to you wonderful people. We're going to rattle through, if we can, guys, where we are in terms of a bit of a transfer roundup. Dan Kilpatrick gave us a couple of different snippets on some players and where we stand. So if we can come around to Pat on this point. Pat, we understand Spurs are willing to try and offload Richarlison's compatriot Emerson Royal, who has understood to attracted interest from AC Milan. And as we know, there is still that interest from Saudi that has been there for some time and has not gone away. There has been reports that Emerson's representatives have met with AC Milan officials during the week, although the defender was not the only player discussed. It's not new news that Spurs do want to sign a new alternative option for the right back position this summer. And as Ange has stated all along, change has to happen if Spurs are to progress. So pretty much a basic one for you, Pat, here. Emerson Royal, one you expect to see move on fairly quickly during this window when it opens?
Yes, please. Let's be efficient. Let's be, ruthless. And it's funny because in the comments, people are saying that they're worried about Romero, but let's not worry about these things. Let's embrace the challenge. Let's embrace, like George and Matt are saying, let's match their ambition. And just talking the big talk. The players want to win things. This is where, we'll see what Tottenham are about. Get these players gone. Your Emersons, your Sessegnons, your Lo Celsos. I like Lo Celso, don't get me wrong, but it hasn't worked. He's not really in Ange's plans. Move him on. Brian Gill, move him on. Let's build a team that is capable of really pushing on, and let's match these guys' ambitions and actually win things. We've been there or thereabouts so many times, and we've always rested on our laurels and not pushed on. Let's push on, man. We finished 5th. It was decent. Could have been better. Could have been worse. But now it's time to really push on. So let's not worry about players coming out and showing that they have ambition and fight. And let's get rid of these guys that Emerson Royale, someone that we probably all like. He's won us all over in terms of his character, the fact that he was a utility guy, played anywhere that the coach wanted him to. I have to applaud that. But quality-wise, he's nowhere near the level that we want. And he frustrates, he flatters to deceive, so have a couple of good games and then revert back to type. It's time. It's time for him to move on. It's time for us to let him go. And let's get some better quality in. So not a problem for me. Hopefully we act fast and, hopefully we can shape the squad in Ange's image as quickly as possible so that we can progress as a club.
And just on that point very quickly, guys, if I can ask you, if I come over to George and Matt on this. George, do you think Spurs will be looking to move Emerson on fairly quickly once that window opens? Or do you have a concern that this might drag this one to the end of the window with Spurs, Tottenham trying to get a desired price tag for him? What's your gut feeling on that for you, George?
I think we'll try and get it done as early as possible. We sort of need to, really, to be honest with you. Same with the likes of Højbjerg. I think they're going to do their best to move it on, but that is the problem. I think, unfortunately, our ambition, or the club's ambitions as to what they want to get for certain players, is a lot higher than some teams can afford, especially in Serie A. So I think that's going to be the major stumbling block. But as we can see, the fact that the agent's already speaking to the club, they're clearly being very proactive on the move, and they know he's not in the plans anymore. So that's a good sign, at least. And like was touched on earlier, Ange just had his plans. He said he's happy with it going forward. So clearly, the aim is to be swift, but I do just worry about how much we are trying to ask for these players.
Okay, and Matty, come over to you. Where do you think, in your mind, Matt, his likely destination is if he is to move on this summer?
Yeah, I think AC Milan. It just feels like one that fits, to be honest. And look, AC Milan are bringing in a new manager. It's likely to be Paulo Fonseca. Maybe he'll have a different idea when he comes in. But for me, it's just one that's kind of been bubbling under the surface for a little bit. And yeah, it just seems like that'll happen. And I think it is one we need to get done quickly. Let's not haggle over a couple of £1 million. If we want 12 and they offer 10, just take it. There's a lot of players we want to move on this summer.
Take it and run, Matt. Take it and run.
£10 million is a lot of money, Ricky. I could do with it.
Absolutely.
Let's not waste time. There's 13 players who want to move on. I don't think we'll get them all moved on, but the ones that there's interest for, let's get it done as quickly as possible. And then we can just take Archie Gray from Leeds and everything's fine.
Yep, absolutely. Look, we're going to rattle through a couple of other players where we stand. Dangle Patrick also confirms that Pierre Højbjerg, Jim Van der Sar, who both enter the final year of their contracts, are set to move along with Brian Hill, while returning loanees Joe Rodon, Jed Spence, Sergio Reguilon, Tungi Ndombele, and Javid Tanganga are not part of Postecoglou's plans. If I can whisk back over to Patty before I go to George on the midfield situation. Pierre Højbjerg, Pat, a player that ultimately, look, we've seen the last couple of windows Spurs have tried to move on, hasn't been successful. He has actually, we've seen in the last 12 months, change representatives, you'd feel, in order to accelerate a move ahead of this upcoming transfer window. Again, Pat, any concern that one might drag, or do you feel that one will be done fairly early? Because I think the key thing is that while Spurs, we know, need to bring players in, I think this is going to be a window, Pat. We're going to see a hell of a lot of players potentially come out.
Yeah, when you named some of those players, I was like, wow, I forgot they even existed. I forgot they was on our books, like Rodon, Spence, decent players, but just wasn't at the level needed at the time. And Højbjerg, again, like Emerson Royale, I like him, consummate professional, has always come in, never sulked, got on with the job, decent on his day. I think we won't have a problem moving him because he is actually a good player. Technically, he's a decent player, just doesn't fit our system. Time to move him on as well. He doesn't really fit. And again, someone who on his day is good, but also can really frustrate, score some weird own goals, gives the ball away in weird areas. Sometimes looks comfortable, sometimes he doesn't. I think his time at Spurs is done, but I've got nothing bad to say about him. I like him. Yeah. I've liked what he's done for us, especially last year. He could have easily come out, started rumours, started, dropping hints, and he didn't. But it's time. Yeah. It's time for us to move on. It's time to part ways. But I don't see it being a problem because I do think he's actually a good player, and a lot of clubs will like the look of him and like how he can perform in a number of different, positions.
That's fair. I mean, George, just come over to you. Giovanni Lo Celso, one player for many Spurs fans feel that he was maybe underplayed during the period where he was fit. I think that's been the biggest frustration, that ultimately, when we've gone to turn to him in a desperate need, he simply just hasn't been fit. And then the times where he has been fit, it does feel like towards the end of the season, and simply made up his mind that, look, he's not a player that we're relying on for next season. Therefore, that might have been the reason by the lack of game time for, of course, Giovanni Lo Celso. I mean, look, there's been some of these kind of players that you do feel, Jules, that ultimately they've got to move on. They've got to get done early. Are you concerned, Jules, by the fact that the hold up in getting some of these players out might restrict us in terms of bringing players in? What's your feeling on that? Because we moved very early, of course, in the January and the summer window to bring players in. Can you feel we can do that again, or do you feel there will be a reliance on raising those funds to get these players out first?
No, we have to do it early again. I don't think there's an issue with the club, but we're so well within PSR and spendings and whatnot that there is no thing of having to raise money to get certain players. We're not in that situation right now. So I think our priority has to be improve the team. A lot of these players, they're going to take a long time to move on. Your Jed Spencers, even Joe Rodon, the fact that Leeds didn't go up. I think if they did go up, that would have been an easy done deal pretty early on. But I think it might have been made a little bit difficult. But hopefully here to the Red Bull investment in them that they might sign him early on. So that's what I'm hoping for anyway. No, we have to get in the players in no matter what. And the reality is we're not going to sell all of them. Quite a few of them are probably going to have to be loaned out naturally. So we can't sit around on our asses and not get the players in we need to. It's just simply not on, in my opinion.
Yeah, again, I think we've made the point there coming from you, Matt. I think the element will be that, look, we've seen it before. Lascelles, so Højbjerg, Hill, there's been genuine interest in these players in the last 2-3 windows. And we've had so many shows on him, Matt, with some wonderful journalists that have all maybe had the feeling that ultimately these players would maybe move on for the right price. They haven't moved on. And then when you couple that with the fact, again, you've got a situation like George has said there, Leeds not going up. You obviously have Rodon, obviously now potentially his future up in the air. Although I think he will get himself a move, whether it be Championship or Premier League, given his performance last season. Spence, Reguilon, and Ndombele, who's going to win another title. Can't make this up with Ndombele. He's been away for a couple of years. The bloke is winning titles. He'll love being on loan. He'll stay on loan the way it stands at the moment. I mean, how confident are you, Matty, will get these players moved on early so Spurs can have that full intense focus on bringing the players in, like George says, really to do actually improve the first team and the squad?
Yeah, I agree with you that there's some there that we will be able to move on quickly. Joe Rodon, definitely one of them. I'm sure Leeds would snap your hand off for the opportunity to have him back on a permanent basis. But for players like Ndombele, it's going to be difficult to get that done permanently, because not only are you lumbering teams with a huge wage bill, it's 200,000 a week that he's on at Spurs. You're also giving them a player who you can't really trust, who will come out one day and have the game of his life, in the next, who knows what happens. Sergio Reguilon had put in the same boat as that. So they will be difficult to get done. And we heard about it with Paratici when he came in, that sometimes he did struggle to sell players, and the proof is in the pudding with what he's done at Spurs. And I hope that doesn't continue, because we stand to lose out on a lot of money, like over 100 million alone for Lascelles and Ndombele on what we paid for them. So yeah, there's a couple there. I think we will be able, like Reguilon, having said what I said, I think he'll get a move to Spain, or he'll get a move to Italy. There will be teams that will take him permanently. But there's some players there that I think we may struggle to move on permanently, and we might just have to deal with loaning them out until their contract comes to an end, which isn't ideal, but it's better than having to play them.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to read this stat out on Ndombele, because ultimately, I just think this is so classic Tottenham. He won the league with Galatasaray. He played 19 games for the Turkish champions. He started only 4, right? So he played 455 minutes. He provided 1 assist and had 1 shot on target. And he joins former Spurs players in Aurier, Sanchez and Vinicius, who are also part of the Galatasaray squad, finishing the season with winners' medals. Do you guys not just feel like this is the ultimate troll? I mean, when they put those pictures out of them all together, just on the parades, you just feel like they're laughing at the Spurs fan base, saying, "Here we go, we've joined the cult, we've got a trophy." I mean, you can't make this up.
The list of Tottenham players that go and win trophies is baffling. I used to keep track of it all on my Twitter. Like Paulo Gazzaniga and Josh Onoma went down to Fulham and they won the playoffs, and Vincent Janssen went off to Mexico and he won the league. It's every single player that leaves us wins, except Harry Kane, ironically. But the list is crazy.
He's a Spurs through and through. He's done.
Exactly.
I tell you, please, Ange, next season, take the bloody Carabao Cup, FA Cup and Europa League seriously, please, for all of our sakes, please. Right, just to finish off on the transfer roundup of news, we understand Dan Kilpatrick again reporting that club will listen to suitable offers for squad players such as Manos Solomon, who again's future is firmly up in the air. Of course, a huge injury that he suffered towards the start of the season, which effectively really ended his season, and one that again, it'll be interesting to see what the summer does lie for him. And again, another reason why Spurs are probably moving early to get Timo Werner through the door, because where is Solomon's future? Only Spurs and he will know. Ryan Sessegnon is expected to leave the club on a free transfer. Friend of the show, Paul O'Keefe, insinuating that there's believed to be some interest from Ipswich there, who have kept hold of their manager. Of course, Darren McKenna signing a new long-term contract with the Tractor Boys. I think some, again, interesting news that comes out of Dan's article is the fact that Spurs will ultimately try and keep Yves Bissouma and Rodrigo Bentancur, and it would take likely a massive offer to tempt Spurs away from selling either of the midfield pair. And what I find that quite fascinating, guys, is that I know there's been some talk amongst the Spurs fan base. I know Lee actually said it on here a few weeks ago that ultimately there may be a real big surprise this summer where a player's going to leave and we wouldn't have seen that coming. I don't know whether you guys, just on that point, do feel that could still happen. I mean, Pat will come to you on this very quickly. I know we're pushed for time. Would there be a situation, Pat, in this summer where a player's going to depart and none of us saw it coming?
As long as it's one of the fringe guys or someone that but I don't want to see us losing Basuma or Bentancur. We need depth and quality. Those two guys are good. They're good players. Maybe obviously they didn't have the best of seasons at points and struggled with injuries and suspensions, and obviously Basuma going off to the Africa Cup and Nations, and when he came back he wasn't the same. But yeah, if we're weakening the squad and then not adding, it just doesn't make sense. We're literally just going around in circles. So I don't know. But even if, like, say, Richarlison goes, we have to then bring in 2 strikers. So ideally, I don't want to see any of the main. You kind of know the main components now. We need to add to it, not take away. So yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Okay, interesting. Look, COYS NY says here, trim the fat aggressively, stay positive, people. Interesting. George, just come to you. Same question to you, George. Do you feel there's going to be a situation this summer where a player goes and we never really saw that coming? It's going to be a real surprise to us as a fan base. Can you see that happening? Or is it a case of really looking to improve, like you say, the team?
I think it's definitely possible, and only because Ange's track record at all his previous clubs is the fans going mental because he sold players that the fans liked and then brought in other players they'd never heard of. But inevitably, the same story always goes there. It always works out in the end. So it's definitely possible, but I'm hoping we've used that all up already on Kane last year. And now it's just about getting rid of the players, like Pat said. Just your Højbjergs, who in any other normal world is considered a good player for a lot of Premier League teams. Maybe it's more of that sort of player, but obviously just doesn't fit the way we play. So we'll move on. I'm hoping we just stick to that, to be honest.
That's interesting. It really, really is. Look, we know, of course, the squad is going to be boosted by the arrival of course, Lucas Bergvall. I know Matt really, really excited by the prospect of what is to come for him, and hopefully the fact that I think, again, with the game Spurs have in pre-season, which I'm going to quickly touch upon, there's a real opportunity to see what this guy is made about and what he can bring to the team. I mean, Matt, just to finish on you on this point before we look to wrap up, how do you feel, Matt? I mean, do you feel there'll be a situation where, I've said it to the boys there is going to be one that leaves that none of us saw coming? Because like George says, and this habit where he goes to football clubs where he does maybe take away a fan's favourite or a player that a lot of fans did really warm to, and ultimately bring in somebody that maybe is more of a relative unknown that does surprise us all.
It's possible, and it wouldn't surprise me if Ange did have something up his sleeve. And if it happened, I'd 100% trust him in the decision that he's made, because the recruitment he's had at Tottenham so far has been for the most part absolutely immense, and we know it's such a big part of what football means to him, that the characters in the dressing room have to be exactly what he needs and exactly what he wants. And he said it himself that one bad apple can poison the entire dressing room, and at the end of the day, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. There could be a player that plays brilliantly every single week, but maybe his attitude in training isn't where Ange needs it to be, and Ange will cut ties. And there's also the element that I think if a player is unsure about his future, and maybe this could apply to Romero as we spoke about earlier, if a player is unsure or a player is considering leaving, I think Ange will push him out the door. With Kane, Ange didn't try and keep him there. He said there's a player who doesn't want to be part of the project, so he was happy to cut ties there. So yeah, I think maybe we have to be prepared for something like that to happen, but I'd fully back whatever the manager wanted to do if that's what it came to.
Yeah, I think, again, it's going to be an interesting summer. It's one to keep your eyes on. Spurs have got one through the door already. There, of course, is going to be an opportunity to bring more and more of those players to the football club as we do ramp up, as the window does open, of course, as we know, on the 14th of June. We've got a bomber coming your way very, very soon on that. Before we look to close the show, a reminder for you, friendly update for Spurs, that it has been announced Spurs will be returning to Scotland. Obviously, Ange Postecoglou with familiar territory, as Spurs will be taking on Premiership side Hearts in a pre-season friendly. That has been announced for Wednesday, July the 17th, with a kickoff time of 7 p.m. UK time. It adds to the fact also for Spurs that they had announced earlier in the week that they'll make the short trip over to Loftus Road to play QPR. That'll be on Saturday, July the 20th. So from Spurs going to Australia, sticking to more on the British side of things, can I say, to some degree. Although we know Spurs are going to be thrown out to South Korea. They'll be taking on, of course, as we know, a indicated K-Star All-11 team, and alongside Bayern Munich as well, in which, again, Harry Kane will be coming up for Spurs, not once, but twice. Eric Dyer as well in there. It's going to be an interesting reunion. Spurs, of course, have them back on August the 10th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for a pre-season friendly. So Spurs being kept firmly busy. But we are going to end the show on a statement or a quote from James Maddison, who has called on Spurs fans to be patient as they aim to build on last season's 5th place finish under Ange Postecoglou. Now, Maddison was speaking at a charity golf day for the Noah's Ark Children's Hospice, where he says, there's definitely been progress this season. It was the first under the manager. Spurs fans, we need to be patient. It's been a difficult first year, but when do you ever see a manager come in the first year and blow everything away and win all the trophies? It's a work in progress. I'm experienced now. I've played with a lot of managers, seen a lot of things, and he's taking the club in the right direction. So believe me, it's an exciting future ahead for Tottenham. I'm experienced now. I know when I see the right thing. It's an exciting future for Tottenham, and just high demanding standards. He's won everywhere he's been. So when you have a man like that in charge, it's refreshing because you can trust him and go along with him, and hopefully success for us will just be around the corner. And on the season itself said, look, fans just want their players to give everything for the football club. If you do that, there'll always be an appreciation. From what I've seen this year, they're going to get some real heroes to follow in the next couple of years. And hopefully those are players that are also going to be joining us this summer. So look, Maddison, Ange, for the praise. We're going to close it on that. It's been a bumper edition of Last Word On Spurs. How we fitted this all into an hour and 15, I don't know. But we make it happen when people have got stuff on. Believe me, they are. It's life. It's what we do. I want to say a massive thank you, if I can, to the wonderful Matty Hayes. Back. Matt, thank you so much. You'll be back with me across the summer. We've got loads of shows to come your way. Transfer season is starting. It's coming closer and closer, Matty.
I cannot wait. Pleasure,
I
Chris.
cannot wait. The 3 lines. Matty, thank you so much. To Patty and George, guys, we're going to see you at the Spurs end of season Last One on Spurs special on Sunday for fun and games. George, where can everybody find what you do? Remind us.
Yeah, it's just George Achillea pretty much on every single platform out there, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. Thanks again for having me on, man. I love to talk about Spurs and stuff, but I'm honestly, I can't hide it. I know a lot of people are hurt by the Werner news and stuff, but I'm so excited for what's going to come for the rest of the transfer window. I'm expecting some big things. Come back. I think in 3 months.
You know, on that point, George. You know, the reality is, if we don't go into summer trying to be optimistic, you know, we're all going to be disappointed. So I think we follow this football club through the thick and the thin, through the good and the bad. And I think ultimately, look, the season was done. It had its good, at its bad points. I think now is a time to get behind the team, get behind the manager. And look, whether you like it or not, the reality is he's got one in that he's wanted very early. You know, when do Spurs do business at the start or the end of May? I've never heard of it before. Is it the one we all wanted? Probably not. Will it be right to judgment in the window? Probably yes. So look, reality is, I think the jury's out until the end of the summer, right?
Everyone was banging on about how terrible a decision it was to go for Vicario instead of Raya, now who's got the best last laugh now. I think this is going to continue to happen. We had an amazing summer last summer, and that was without even seeing an ounce of Ange ball. So I think he's really, really nailed in what he needs from this squad to succeed. And that's why I think, personally, for me, this is the window that I'm excited for the most for. So that's all I can say. Appreciate having me on.
Thank you so much. Pleasure as always. We're looking to have you back on with us soon. Matty, a reminder, you can follow Matt over at Matty Hayes on, of course, X. He's still got that YouTube channel there. It could be coming back alive. I'll keep it going for him. You never know. Keep it going. Go and follow Matty. Go follow George. Go follow Patty, that's for sure. Patty, thank you so much. Busy summer in store. We're going to keep on moving. We're going to keep on going. Thank you so much as always, my man. And I've taken you a little bit over time, but lots to happen this summer, right?
Yeah, it's all good. Everyone get down to the Bricklayers on Sunday. We need you all there. By all means, hit that QR code. I'm going to start posting and pushing it on my socials tomorrow. Ricky's always very modest about all these things, so we're going to have to shout and obviously do the promotion for him. So yeah, there it is on the screen. Scan that QR code. Hit up the number as well.
If you want me to see me win all the games, then come on now.
Come on, get out of here, man. But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. These pods are always fantastic, and the Werner one divides opinion. I'm not gonna go crazy yet. It's too early. We'll see what happens. As long as more players are brought in, everyone keeps telling me Ange's no mug. Ange knows what he wants. Ange will make sure we're better in our second season. So let's see. You know, sometimes you have to have a bit of blind faith. Trust the manager, trust the process, trust what Paratici and Johan Lange and everyone's doing behind the scenes, and we take it from there, man. So let's not go crazy yet. It's too early. But obviously, don't get me wrong. Maintain your standards, keep your standards high, because without standards and without us pushing on, this club won't push forward. So don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that I endorse Werner 100%, but also I'm not going to go crazy as it's too early. But yeah, big up everyone. You know, I always end up waffling on and all of that. So yeah, love. See you all on Sunday, and take care of yourselves, man. And stop arguing, stop fighting amongst yourselves. Like, go at the Arsenal fans, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Man United, whatever, Newcastle, but stop fighting other Spurs fans. It's mental. Every time I go on Twitter, I see Spurs fans fighting Spurs fans, and it just, yeah, it does my nutting, man. There's too many other horrible fan bases. We don't need to fight amongst ourselves.
It's beautifully put.
I tell you what, Matty there was getting on a Jerry Springer mode, so I'll close it on Jerry Springer. From all of us here, take care of yourselves and each other. From Matty, from George, from Batty, we've been the last one of Spurs. Keep safe, keep well. We're back with you soon. And as always, come on, you Spurs.